The night was alive with hunger. Above the blackthorn forest, the blood moon hung like a dripping wound in the sky, staining the world crimson. Shadows twisted between the ancient trees, and the air trembled with the promise of violence. Among the darkness, something moved, something feral. Kale, the alpha of the Black Fang pack, ran with the wind. His massive form, a nightmare of muscle and fur, cut through the underbrush like a blade. His golden eyes burned with primal fire, scanning, hunting. His pack followed, a storm of snarls and snapping jaws, but he was the storm's heart. The beast in him ruled tonight, and it wanted blood. Then her. A whisper of movement, too graceful to be mortal. A scent, cold and intoxicating, like roses dipped in frost. His head snapped up, nostrils flaring. Vampire. She stood atop a jagged rock, bathed in moonlight. Seraphina. Her beauty was a weapon. Long silver hair cascaded like liquid moonlight over her shoulders, framing a face carved from porcelain and cruelty. Her lips, the color of freshly spilled wine, curled into a smirk as she watched the werewolves below. She was dressed in shadows, her gown clinging to her like smoke, revealing the lethal curves of her body. Kale's growl shook the earth beneath him. His pack froze, sensing the shift in their alpha. Their eyes darted between him and the vampire princess, confusion and rage rippling through them. She should not be here. This was their territory, their hunt. Yet Kale did not attack. He stepped forward, his massive paws crushing twigs and bones alike. His gaze never left hers. Seraphina's crimson eyes gleamed, unafraid. A challenge. "Little wolf," she purred, her voice like poison silk. "Do you plan to stare, or will you try to kill me?" The pack snarled, but Kale silenced them with a flick of his ear. His muscles coiled, ready to spring, but not to kill. No, something deeper, darker, pulled at him. The beast inside him didn't want her dead. It wanted her claimed. In a blur of fur and fury, he lunged. Seraphina moved faster, a streak of pale moonlight, but Kale was relentless. He chased her through the trees, their dance a whirl of snapping fangs and mocking laughter. She was fast, but he was hunger. Finally, he cornered her against an ancient oak, his massive body caging her in. Her back pressed against the bark, her chest rising in a rare, unsteady breath. For the first time, her smirk wavered. Kale's muzzle dipped, his hot breath ghosting over her throat. He inhaled deeply, taking in her scent, ice and iron, danger and desire. His growl vibrated against her skin. "Mine," he rumbled, the word rough, guttural, final. Seraphina's eyes widened. No one had ever dared. No one had ever survived daring. Yet when his teeth grazed her skin, she didn't strike. She shivered. The pack howled in outrage. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Kale pulled back just enough to meet her gaze, his golden eyes blazing with something more than hunger. Seraphina's lips parted, her fangs glinting. "Foolish beast," she whispered, but her voice lacked its usual venom. Kale's answer was a dark, possessive snarl. The game had begun. The air between them crackled like lightning before a storm. Seraphina's crimson eyes burned with icy fury, her delicate fingers curling into claws. No beast, no creature, had ever laid hands on her and lived. Yet here he stood, his massive body blocking her escape, his golden gaze searing into her very soul. The werewolf's scent enveloped her, wild and intoxicating, like a forest drenched in blood and storm. She bared her fangs. "You will regret this." Kale's lips peeled back in a slow, dangerous grin. His voice was rough velvet, scraping against her senses. "Already due, but not for the reason you think." His hand shot out, fingers tangling in her silver hair. Not to hurt, to possess. The touch sent an electric jolt down her spine. She hissed, her nails slicing across his chest, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled her closer until her cold body pressed against the furnace of his. "Let me go," she snarled. No. The word was absolute, final. Around them, the forest had gone silent. Even the wind held its breath. The Black Fang pack circled, their growls vibrating the earth, but none dared interfere. Their alpha had claimed his prey, and now, the hunt had changed. Seraphina's heart, dead for centuries, pounded. It was impossible. She was a princess of the night, a predator who had brought kings to their knees. Yet this beast, this mongrel, made her feel something she had long forgotten. Fear. No, not fear. Desire. She recoiled from the thought, but Cale saw it. His nostrils flared, catching the shift in her scent. His grin turned wolfish. "You want to run?" he murmured, his breath hot against her ear. "Do it. I love the chase." Her pride ignited. With a snarl, she twisted free, her body dissolving into mist, only for Cale's claws to snap out, catching her wrist like a shackle. He yanked her back, her form solidifying against him once more. "Clever," he rumbled, "but not clever enough." She glared up at him, her chest heaving. "What do you want?" His gaze dropped to her lips, then lower, to the pulse fluttering at her throat. "You know." The hunger in his voice sent a treacherous heat pooling in her belly. She wanted to rip his throat out. She wanted to taste it. Before she could decide, a new voice cut through the tension, cold, refined, deadly. "Unhand her, dog." Cale's grip tightened, but Seraphina went rigid. She knew that voice. Lord Valen, her betrothed. The vampire emerged from the shadows like a nightmare given form. His onyx hair framed a face carved from marble, his eyes twin pools of endless black. His presence alone made the pack whimper, their instincts screaming danger. Yet Cale didn't back down. He turned, keeping Seraphina behind him, his growl shaking the trees. "She's mine." Valen's smile was a razor. "She is property, and you are nothing." Seraphina's nails dug into Cale's arm. She didn't know why. To stop him? To urge him on? Valen's gaze flicked to her, his voice dripping venom. "Come, my dear. You've played with your food long enough." Cale's muscles coiled. His voice dropped to a whisper, for her alone. "Choose." Her breath hitched. "Choose." The word echoed in her hollow chest. For centuries, she had been a pawn, a trophy, a thing. No one had ever asked her to choose. Valen extended a hand, his patience thinning. Now, the forest waited. The world waited. Then, Seraphina stepped closer to Cale. Valen's eyes turned to ice. "You will regret this." Cale's answering grin was pure savagery. "Worth it." With a roar, Valen lunged, and the night erupted into blood. Blood splattered across the moonlit leaves as Cale and Valen clashed. Fangs met claws in a whirl of fury, the forest itself recoiling from their violence. Seraphina stood frozen, her pale fingers pressed to her lips, still burning from the ghost of Cale's breath, still trembling from the weight of her choice. She had sided with the beast, and now the night would drown in crimson for it. Valen moved like liquid shadow, his strikes precise, merciless. But Cale fought like the storm-given flesh, all thunder and teeth, his body a weapon honed by centuries of moonlight hunts. When Valen's claws raked across his ribs, Cale barely flinched. Instead, he laughed, the sound dark and wild. "That all you got, bloodsucker?" Seraphina's undead heart gave a traitorous thud. The pack howled, circling like living shadows, but they knew better than to interfere. This was Alpha's battle, and Cale was winning. With a snarl, he slammed Valen into the earth, his claws pinning the vampire's throat. Valen's eyes burned with hatred, his lips peeling back from his fangs. "You think this changes anything? She will never be yours." Cale's grip tightened, already is. A hand closed around Cale's wrist, cold, delicate, familiar. Seraphina's touch was like frost against his fevered skin. "Enough," she whispered. The world stilled. Cale's golden eyes flicked to hers, the beast in him warring with something deeper, something human. "He'll come for you," he growled. "Let him." Her fingers tightened. "But not like this." For a heartbeat, Cale hesitated. Then, with a final warning snarl, he released Valen, shoving him back into the darkness. Valen staggered, his perfect composure shattered. "This isn't over," he spat, his voice trembling with rage. Seraphina didn't look at him. Her gaze was locked on Cale, on the blood matting his fur, on the way his chest heaved with each breath. Something dangerous flickered in her chest, something like want. The pack shifted restlessly. One of them, A scarred male with silver-streaked fur stepped forward. "Alpha," he rasped, "the vampire court will hunt us for this." Kale's jaw clenched. He knew the truth in those words. By claiming Seraphina, he had declared war on creatures far older, far crueler than any wolf. Seraphina saw the understanding in his eyes and the defiance that followed. Her lips curved, slow and wicked. "Scared, little wolf?" A rumble built in Kale's chest. "Never." "Then prove it." She stepped closer until her body nearly brushed his. The scent of her, cold jasmine and iron, dizzy him. "Survived 3 nights in my court. Let them try to break you. If you live," her voice dropped, a whisper meant for him alone, "I'll let you keep me." The challenge hung between them, sharp as a blade. Kale's answering grin was all teeth. "Game on, princess." The vampire court was not kind. Kale walked into their midst like a wildfire into a tomb. The grand hall, carved from black marble and lit by floating witchlight, fell silent as the assembled vampires turned to stare. Their eyes gleamed like polished gemstones, cold, calculating, hungry. Kale's growl vibrated the air, but Seraphina lifted a hand, silencing him without a word. "He's here by my invitation," she said, her voice smooth as poisoned wine. "Let's see if he's worth it." The first night, they poisoned his wine. Kale drank it anyway, his throat burning as the liquid seared through him. He locked eyes with Seraphina as his vision blurred, as his muscles seized. The vampires laughed, waiting for him to collapse. He didn't. When dawn came, he was still standing, his golden gaze fixed on her. "One," he rasped. The second night, they sent a siren, a vampire whose voice could unravel minds. She whispered to Kale of sweet deaths and sweeter surrenders, her fingers trailing over his chest. He caught her wrist, his grip crushing. Not interested. Seraphina's lips twitched. The third night, they came for him in force. Blades flashed in the dark. Claws ripped at his flesh. Kale fought like a demon, his body a canvas of blood and fury, but even he had limits. As the vampires closed in, Seraphina rose from her throne. "Enough." The word cracked like a whip. The court froze. Seraphina descended the steps, her gown whispering against the stone. She stopped before Kale, her eyes tracing his wounds, his defiance. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she pressed her palm to his chest, right over his pounding heart. "He's mine," she said, her voice ringing through the hall. "Any who touch him again answer to me." Silence. Then, Lucen laughed. "Oh, sister, you always did have terrible taste." Kale's hand closed over Seraphina's, his blood smearing her pale skin. "Too late now," he muttered. Her fingers curled against his. "Yes," she agreed softly, "it is." The court erupted into chaos. But Kale and Seraphina didn't hear it. They were already gone. The castle corridor swallowed them whole, shadows licking at their heels as they fled the uproar of the court. Seraphina moved like a wraith, her silver hair flashing in the dim torchlight, her gown whispering against stone. Kale followed, his massive form bleeding, his breath ragged, but his grip on her hand was iron. She didn't pull away. They burst into her chambers, the heavy oak door slamming shut behind them. The room was cold, elegant, hers, obsidian floors, velvet drapes, a bed carved from black wood and draped in silk. The scent of her lingered everywhere, frost and something darker, something sweet. Kale's nostrils flared. "Mine." Seraphina turned, her crimson eyes burning in the gloom. "You're ruining my floors," she murmured, glancing at the blood dripping from his wounds. He bared his teeth in a grin. "You'll live." A beat of silence. Then, she was on him. Her hands shoved against his chest, sending him stumbling back into the door. Her fangs glinted as she snarled, "You arrogant, reckless beast. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Kale didn't fight her. He let her push, let her rage, his golden eyes locked on hers. "Won you. You've doomed us." Her voice cracked, something raw beneath the fury. "The court will never accept this. Valen will hunt us. My own kind will turn on me. Let them." His hands rose, gripping her waist, pulling her flush against him. Her breath hitched. "You're stronger than them. You don't know that." "I do." His thumb brushed the curve of her hip, leaving a smear of blood. Saw it the moment I caught your scent. She trembled, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. His touch burned, even through the fabric of her gown. His body was a furnace, his heartbeat a relentless drum against her cold skin. She should have killed him by now. So why couldn't she? Cale's nose dipped to her throat, inhaling deeply. You smell like winter, he murmured, like the first frost. Like mine. Her fingers twisted in his fur. I belong to no one. Lie. His lips grazed her pulse point, not biting, just testing. Tasting. You wouldn't have stopped them if you didn't want me. She shuddered. Damn him. Damn him. His hand slid up her back, claws careful against her delicate skin. Tell me to stop, he challenged, his voice rough. She should have. She would have. But then his teeth scraped the curve of her shoulder, gentle, possessive, and the words died in her throat. A sound escaped her, something small, something weak, and Cale growled in response, the vibration shuddering through her entire body. Knew it, he rasped. You want this. She did. God help her, she did. Her nails dug into his shoulders as she dragged him closer, her lips finding his in a clash of teeth and desperation. He met her with equal hunger, his kiss as wild as the forest that bore him, as untamed as the beast in his blood. The world narrowed to this hands on her waist, to her fingers in his hair, to the way their breaths tangled, hot and ragged. Then, a knock at the door. They froze. Princess, Lucian's voice, smooth as poison honey, slithered through the wood. The council demands your presence. Seraphina's grip tightened on Cale. Her voice, when it came, was steady. Tell them I'll come when I please. A pause. Then softer. They won't wait forever, sister. Let them rot. Silence. Then footsteps fading. Cale's lips curled against her skin. Defiant little thing, aren't you? She pulled back just enough to meet his gaze. You have no idea. His answering grin was feral. Oh, I do. And then he was lifting her, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the bed, the world outside forgotten. For tonight, at least, they were only this. Dawn bulled across the sky in streaks of violet and gold, but the castle still hummed with tension. Seraphina stood at the arched window, her fingers pressed to the cool glass, watching the horizon darken with approaching storm clouds. Behind her, Cale slept. A mountain of fur and muscle sprawled across her bed, his breathing deep and even. She should have killed him in his sleep. She should have left. Instead, she found herself tracing the scars on his back with her gaze, memorizing the way the dim light caught on the ridges of old wounds. A mistake. The door burst open without warning. Seraphina whirled, her fangs bared, but it was too late. Valen stood in the doorway, his black armor gleaming, his eyes twin pits of endless night. Behind him, the Vampire Council loomed, their faces carved from ice and malice. Did you think I'd let this stand? Valen's voice was soft, deadly. Cale was awake in an instant, his body rolling off the bed with a snarl, his golden eyes locking onto the threat. Should have stayed gone, he growled. Valen didn't look at him. His gaze was fixed on Seraphina. You shame our blood. You shame me. Her spine stiffened. I owe you nothing. You owe me everything. His hand flicked, and the council moved as one, their claws unsheathed. But I'll be merciful. Kill the beast, and your betrayal will be forgiven. Cale's laugh was a dark, rolling thunder. Good luck with that. Valen's lip curled. You think this is the game, Mongrel? No. Cale's muscles coiled, ready to strike. I think it's a slaughter. The room erupted. Vampires lunged, their movements a blur of pale skin and glinting fangs. Cale met them head-on, his claws rending flesh, his snarls shaking the very stones. Seraphina moved like lightning, her own fangs finding throats, her gown splattered crimson. But there were too many. A blade sliced Cale's side, another grazed his thigh. He roared, his blood painting the floor, but he didn't stop. Couldn't. Valen struck like a viper, his fist driving into Cale's ribs with enough force to crack bone. Cale staggered, and Valen was on him, his fangs aimed for the killing bite. Seraphina screamed. The sound was raw, primal, terrifying. Valen froze. So did the others. Seraphina stood in the center of the carnage, her silver hair wild, her eyes burning like hellfire. "Enough," she hissed. Valen straightened, wiping blood from his mouth. "You choose him over your own kind?" "I choose myself." Her voice was steel. "For once in my cursed existence, I choose what I want." Kale's breath was ragged, but his grin was pure triumph. "Told you she was mine." Valen's face twisted. Then, with a snarl, he ripped a dagger from his belt, a blade of black and silver, forged to kill immortals, then die together. He lunged. Kale moved faster. The clash was brutal, a dance of fangs and fury, each strike meant to cripple, to kill. Valen was centuries older, his skill unmatched, but Kale fought with the wild, untamed rage of a beast defending its mate. When Valen's dagger found Kale's shoulder, Kale didn't flinch. He smiled. Then he tore Valen's throat out with his teeth. The council gasped. Valen staggered, his hands clutching the ruin of his neck, his eyes wide with disbelief. Kale spat the blood onto the floor. "Should have stayed gone," he repeated, his voice guttural. Valen collapsed. Silence. Then, the council fled. Seraphina didn't watch them go. Her eyes were on Kale, on the way his body swayed, on the blood pouring from his wounds. He met her gaze, his chest heaving. "Still want me, princess?" Her answer was to stride forward, her hands gripping his face, her lips crashing into his with a desperation that bordered on madness. He kissed her back just as fiercely, his arms locking around her, his blood staining her skin. Outside, the storm broke. But inside, they burned. Blood dripped from the walls. The castle, once a monument to immortal elegance, now reeked of violence and betrayal. Seraphina's hands trembled as she dragged a bag of stolen supplies across the floor, her movements sharp with urgency. They had minutes, maybe less, before the remaining vampires regrouped and came for them with fire and fury. Kale leaned against the doorway, his breath ragged, his fur matted with gore. His wounds were already knitting together, but the silver poisoning from Valen's dagger still burned through his veins like acid. He watched her, his golden eyes tracking every flicker of her fingers, every hitch in her normally flawless composure. "You're scared," he rasped. She didn't look up. "I don't scare." "Liar." He pushed off the wall, ignoring the way his muscles screamed in protest. In 2 strides, he was in front of her, his claws catching her chin, forcing her gaze up. "You're shaking." Her crimson eyes flashed, from rage, not fear. He smirked. Rage tastes different. She bared her fangs, but there was no real bite behind it. "Not anymore. Not with him. We need to leave. Now." He didn't argue. The forest swallowed them whole, the trees closing in like sentinels guarding their escape. The night was alive with whispers, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of wolves, the ever-present threat of pursuit. Seraphina moved like a shadow, her steps silent, her body tense. Kale stayed at her side, his senses stretched to their limits, his instincts screaming at every snapped twig, every shift in the wind. They ran until the castle was nothing but a jagged silhouette against the storm-lit sky. Then finally Seraphina stopped. Her chest rose and fell in unsteady bursts, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper, something raw. Kale watched her, his own pulse thundering in his ears. "They'll never stop hunting us," she whispered. He stepped closer, his body radiating heat despite the chill in the air. "Let them come." "You don't understand." Her voice cracked. "I've never run from anything. I've never had to." His hand found hers, his claws careful against her delicate skin. First time for everything. She stared at their joined hands, her expression unreadable. Then, with a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob, she yanked him forward, her lips crashing into his with a desperation that left them both breathless. He growled into the kiss, his arms locking around her, his body pressing her back against the rough bark of an ancient oak. Her nails dug into his shoulders, her fangs grazing his bottom lip, drawing blood. He didn't care. The pain was nothing compared to the fire she ignited in him. When she finally pulled away, her lips were stained crimson. His blood, hers now. "Mine," he snarled. She didn't argue. The storm broke above them, rain slicing through the canopy in icy sheets. Kel barely noticed. His world had narrowed to her, to the way her breath hitched when his teeth scraped her throat, to the way her body arched against his, to the way she fit against him, like she was made to be there. She was cold, he was fire. And together, they burned. The days blurred. They traveled under the cover of night, through forgotten valleys and cursed ruins, always moving, always watching. Kel hunted for them, his claws tearing through prey with brutal efficiency. Seraphina fed from him, her fangs sinking into his wrist, his throat, his thigh, anywhere she could reach. The exchange was intimate, intoxicating theirs. But the peace wouldn't last. Kel felt it first, the shift in the wind, the prickle of warning along his spine. He woke one evening to find Seraphina gone, her scent trailing into the trees. He followed without hesitation. He found her standing at the edge of a cliff, her back to him, her silver hair whipping in the wind. Below them, the world stretched out, endless, untamed, free. Thinking of jumping, princess, he rumbled. She didn't turn. Would you catch me? No. He stepped closer, his chest pressing against her back, his arms circling her waist. I'd jump with you. She leaned into him, her head tilting just enough to expose the pale column of her throat. An offering, a surrender. His teeth found her skin. And for the first time in centuries, Seraphina let herself feel. The moon watched, silent and knowing, as the beast and the vampire stood on the edge of the world together. Always together. The ruins of the forgotten temple rose from the earth like broken teeth, its stones slick with moss and old blood. Moonlight speared through the shattered dome above, painting the altar in silver and shadow. Seraphina stood before it, her fingers tracing the ancient runes carved into its surface, symbols of binding, of sacrifice, of eternity. Kel watched her from the doorway, his arms crossed, his golden eyes burning in the dark. This is a bad idea. You have a better one? Her voice was sharp, but her hands trembled. He didn't answer. The blood oath was their last hope, the only way to bind their souls before the curses in their blood tore them apart. Kel's wolf grew more feral with each passing moon, his humanity slipping like sand through his claws. Seraphina's vampiric hunger twisted darker, her need for his blood bordering on obsession. They were running out of time. Seraphina turned to face him, her crimson eyes gleaming. The ritual requires a sacrifice. One of us must die by the other's hand to complete the bond. The words hung between them, heavy as a blade. Kel's jaw tightened. Then it'll be me. No. She stepped closer, her gown whispering against the stone. I've lived centuries. You've barely begun. His growl shook the air. Not happening. You don't get to decide. He caught her wrist, yanking her against him. The hell I don't. His breath was hot against her lips, his grip unbreakable. I didn't fight this hard to keep you just to lose you now. Her fangs flashed. Then what do you suggest, beast? His thumb brushed the pulse in her wrist, slow, steady, wrong for a creature of her kind. We find another way. There is no other way. There's always a way. She wrenched free, her nails slicing his chest in frustration. You stubborn, reckless. He kissed her. Hard. Her anger melted into the heat of his mouth, her body arching against his like a bowstring pulled taut. When he finally pulled away, his lips were stained with her breath, her taste, her need. Trust me, he growled. Her eyes searched his, desperate, furious, terrified. Then, with a shuddering breath, she nodded. The ritual began at midnight. Seraphina's voice curled through the ruins like smoke as she chanted the old words, the language of a dead kingdom. Kel knelt before the altar, his claws digging into his own palms, his blood dripping onto the rooms below. The air thickened, the very shadows twisting in response. Something ancient stirred, something hungry. The ground trembled as the magic took hold, tendrils of crimson light slithering up their bodies, binding them together in a web of fate and fury. Seraphina's voice never wavered, even as the power scraped against her bones like claws. Then, the vision struck. Kel, standing over her, his claws buried in her heart. Seraphina, her fangs in his throat, his lifeblood spilling between her lips. The two of them, entwined in death and life, in something beyond both. The images seared into their minds, relentless, inescapable. Serafina gasped, breaking the chant. No. Kale snarled, his body shaking with the force of the magic. Keep going. It's showing us. I don't care. His eyes burned into hers. Finish it. Her hands trembled as she reached for the dagger on the altar, the sacred blade, the one meant to spill the sacrificial blood. Kale's fingers closed over hers, together. The blade flashed. Their blood mingled on the stone. The world exploded. When the dust settled, they were still alive. The temple lay in ruins around them, the altar shattered, the rooms dark. Serafina lay sprawled across Kale's chest, her body humming with power, her veins alight with something new, something other. Kale's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. His claws were longer, sharper. His eyes, when they met hers, held the flicker of something darker. But he was here, and so was she. The bond was sealed. The cost, still to come. Serafina pressed her forehead to his, her voice barely a whisper. What have we done? Kale's grin was all teeth. Something stupid. She laughed, the sound wild, unhinged, free. And in the distance, the wolves began to howl. The wind carried the scent of war. It curled through the trees, whispering of steel and fire, of ancient hatreds reforged in blood. Kale stood at the cliff's edge, his golden eyes scanning the horizon, his body tense as a drawn bowstring. Behind him, Serafina paced, her nails biting into her palms, her crimson gaze locked on the distant smudge of torchlight winding through the valley. Their enemies had come. All of them. The vampire covens, led by Lucen's cold fury. The werewolf packs, united under a single alpha's command, one who saw Kale as a traitor, a mongrel who'd forsaken his kind for a creature of the night. And then there were the humans, the hunters. Always the hunters. Serafina's voice was a blade in the dark. We should run. Kale didn't turn. No, they'll kill us. Maybe, his claws flexed, but we'll take half of them with us. She snarled, grabbing his arm, forcing him to face her. This isn't a game. They have silver. They have holy fire. They have. I know what they have. His hand cupped her cheek, rough but tender. But I'm not hiding anymore, and neither are you. Her breath hitched. He was right. She was so tired of running. The battle began at dusk. Kale fought like a demon unleashed, his body a whirlwind of fangs and fury, his claws painting the earth red. Serafina moved beside him, her form a blur of pale death, her fangs finding throats, her magic twisting the shadows into weapons. They were beautiful together, terrible, unstoppable, until the arrow struck Kale's chest. Silver-tipped, holy oil smeared along his shaft. Serafina's scream tore through the night as he staggered, his knees hitting the dirt, his blood black in the moonlight. Lucen stepped from the fray, a sword of blessed steel in his hand, his smile a razor's edge. Pathetic. Kale growled, trying to rise, but the poison was already spreading, his muscles locking, his vision swimming. Serafina lunged for Lucen, only for a werewolf's jaws to clamp around her leg, yanking her down. The world narrowed to pain, to failure, to loss. Then, Kale's hand found hers. His grip was weak, his breathing ragged, but his eyes burned. Sarah, he rasped. She knew what he was asking, what he was offering. Her undead heart shattered. No, she whispered. Do it. His fingers tightened. Please. She hesitated. Then, she struck. Her fangs sank into his throat, not to feed, but to give. Her venom, her blood, her curse flooded into him, a tidal wave of dark power. Kale arched beneath her, his body seizing, his howl of agony shaking the very stars. The wolves froze. The vampires recoiled. Even Lucen took a step back, his face pale. What have you done? Serafina didn't answer. She was too busy holding Kale as he died, and was reborn. When he opened his eyes, they were red, no longer gold, no longer wolf. Something else. Something more. He rose, his body taller, his claws longer, his presence a suffocating weight of primal terror. The werewolves whimpered. The vampires crossed themselves. Lucian's sword trembled in his grip. Abomination. Cale smiled. Then he tore the world apart. Dawn found them alone. The battlefield was a graveyard. The survivors had fled, their courage broken, their numbers shattered. Seraphina sat beside Cale on the cliff's edge, her head resting on his shoulder, her fingers laced with his. His skin was colder now, his heart beat slower. But he was here, and so was she. "What are we now?" she whispered. His thumb brushed her knuckles. Together. The sun rose, painting them in gold and crimson. Neither of them flinched.